Tell me.
Do you know what should be done?
What?
I'll tell you what should be done.
Tell me.
Since now that Nigel Farage is now an MP, he has more standards, right? I want Starmer to stand there and say he's been egging on. Him and Tice has been egging these people on. They've not called him out. They've not said nothing about him doing it. If they don't just stand up and say that he's wrong what they're doing, I want him to incite them, right? I want him to say, and Starmer should be getting them in trouble for that, and also, getting Tommy Robinson arrested because he put a list of all these places for him to go. He's put a list on his Twitter. I want them all at the top because it starts off at the top. The little ones, get the little ones, whatever. Not going to really harm everybody, but get the ones at the top because that's how it starts. What starts, right? This is no different from Oswald Mosley. It's no different from anybody else. And quite frankly, right, what I will say is when the economy is really bad at the minute, right, and this is rinse and repeat, just like the Nazis tried to do with the Jews, just like everybody does. Every time the economy goes poor, we all blame the immigrants. We all blame that. Well, you know what? Give me thousands of immigrants and I want to ship these lot out. I don't want these lot. They're not part of me. I felt so ashamed. I was crying. I watched them white people smash that black place in Manchester. That really upset me. You're not doing that in my name. You're not doing that in my name. I'll tell you what, and any good British person, right, should be stood up now. We always say that when Islam do their thing, we always say Muslims should stand up. Well, you know what? We should stand up and say, you are not doing that in my name.
So we pay the royal family for all those things. We pay the royal family when we put up wind turbines. For example, I'll give you some specific examples here. The NHS will pay the King's Duchy £11 million to rent a warehouse for ambulances. For example, the Army will pay the Royals to train on Dartmoor. For example, the Ministry of Justice pays Prince William £1.5 million a year just to use Dartmoor Prison. The King's Duchy charges the Dorset Fire Authority £612,000 to lease its land to put up a new fire station. You may be Liverpudlian if you're listening in Liverpool. Do you use the Jerry Marsden ferry pier there? If you do, then the King's Duchy has charged you and other users £130,000 so far and has even inserted a clause into the lease stating it can charge more if the ferry ever makes a profit. This, lovely listener, you will gather, is the very tip of the iceberg.
It's being effectively a grown-up. You're not a child, you're a grown-up now in a grown-up world with grown-up responsibilities.
Mm-hmm. And you see, I mean, lots of people will say, well, it is very grown up to be in a nightclub, larging it. That's what people do when they're grown up. You're allowed in a nightclub, you're allowed to drink alcohol. There's no bossy adult to tell you to go to bed, so you don't have to go to bed. So you can rave, you can bleach it right through the night till the next morning. Yahoo, fantastic.
Well, it's great. We can all let her hair down like that, but she's really coming across as the Vicky Pollard, Catherine Tate of the party.
See, now I wonder if you're being snobby. Are you being snobbish?
No, I'm not being snobby at all. I think I'm being realistic. It's
Vicky
a case
Pollard,
of
that's not a compliment.
The power of her office. Right. It's such an honour to hold that office. You're representing the country.
What sort of fun on holiday would you allow Angela Rayner to have? What should she be doing that you think is appropriate?
I think she just needs to be more conscious and aware that we're living in such a fast-paced, social media-driven world now.
Let's go straight to Tom Baldwin, journalist and former senior Labour Party advisor. Tom, good afternoon. It looks as if this is going to be an absolutely sizzling, soar-away Sadiq Khan success again.
Yeah, it looks like he's won by a bigger majority than he won last time. There's been a swing away from the Conservative Sadiq Khan, so you'll be very pleased with that.
And tell me what he's done. I mean, it's a pretty sort of elementary question, and yet genuinely I'm asking it, not disingenuously, but genuinely, what do you think he has done to deserve it? And is it what he has done that might be the cause of another victory, a third victory? Or is it simply that the Conservatives failed to field a convincing candidate, that Susan Hall seemed to be lacking in all kinds of essential qualities from the very beginning?
Including good sense, yeah. Look, it's not a straightforward three-word answer why Sadiq Khan has won 3 terms. Yeah, I think London is a Labour city. But more importantly than that, I think there's been a contrast between what we're seeing in Westminster, government going through in this parliament, 3 prime ministers, 5 chancellors, chaos, a kind of sense that you have absolutely no direction, and someone governing London standing up for the diversity and complexity of this brilliant city, not getting dragged into the sort of stupid culture war politics and the divisive politics that I think some of his opponents want to do, but actually standing up for the whole city. I think in that sense, Sadiq Khan has actually been a very good mayor.
Do give me a couple of examples. When you say he stood up for the diversity in the city and championed it, in what way? Which particular kind of notable moments or events or campaigns encapsulated his standing up for diversity in London?
Well, there's been an incredible amount of division within the Labour Party over anti-Semitism, and I think Sadiq Khan's been very much on the right side of that, working with Keir Starmer to help root out anti-Semitism and stand up for Jewish communities. There's also a big problem in this city with Islamophobia, and some of his political opponents have sort of played games on that. And I think Keir Starmer hasn't, both Keir Starmer and Sadiq Khan have actually really made it clear that this is not the kind of politics that they want to represent. It's not the kind of city that London is. And I think that's why London's voted for again. His record's pretty good if you look at 100,000 affordable homes, more than 100,000 affordable homes started since he began his second term. Free school dinners.
I mean, let me stop you on the homes. You're making a delightful list, and I'm not going to stop you making it, but I am going to ask you about the homes.
You asked with a tone of utter incredulity why anybody could possibly have voted for this man, Sadiq Khan. I'm giving you some answers.
You are, but I have no idea whether your list will be as long as 100 or whether it'll be as short as 5. So I have to interrupt you at some point to ask you a question because I have no idea how you're going to continue. So let me ask you about the housing, for example. He's been mayor now for 2 terms, 8 years, and I remember interviewing him when he was campaigning to be elected the first time around, and I remember him saying very convincingly, great gung-ho kind of enthusiasm, that he was going to build a whole lot of housing, affordable housing, almost immediately, imminently should he be elected, on TfL land. That was his plan. I remember him telling me, sat right opposite me, a foot away from me, and told me that was going to be the big plan. I don't know whether, he has delivered as he said he would. He certainly promised, that the housing crisis in London would be materially alleviated by his good offices. But has it been?
Well, look, so I'm not a Labour Party spokesperson. I've been there, done that job.
Not asking you to be.
No, but if you want to ask about detail of Sadiq Khan's housing policies, ask Sadiq Khan. I'm here as the biographer of Keir Starmer and a former Labour advisor, and I'm telling you why I think Keir Starmer has won by a bigger majority. He's taken Transport for London, which was on the floor after COVID, and he's got it moving again. It's not easy being London mayor. You don't have huge amount of power. Mm-hmm. You're dealing with huge restrictions in terms of central government funding. It's very hard to get housing moving without the sort of planning reform which a Labour government would be introducing within its first 100 days, I think.
I just one more thing.
You can do.
Pretty salient thing, though. Under Sadiq Khan's mayoralty, 2 of them, knife crime has increased 38%. The idea of kind of lawlessness, the Met Police having to apologise for its woeful performance, as we know, and you just wonder about law and order, don't you, in the streets of London under Sadiq Khan?
Well, Sadiq Khan, as you know, did sack the previous Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police because he's unhappy with her.
Took a long time, though.
I think we have to be a bit careful about, crime is, some serious crime is rising right across the country. I think it's down to a whole range of social issues. Other forms of crime are falling. I wouldn't blame the government for every crime that's committed. I blame criminals for every crime that's committed. I don't think you can say, knife crime is rising under Sadiq Khan and somehow it's responsible for people getting knifed to death. Why do you think that's happening?
All right, Tom, thank you very much indeed. Good to hear from you.
Why do you think knife crime? Why do you think Sadiq Khan is responsible for rising knife crime?
Well, I think that as Mayor of London, that's your remit, isn't it? That crime and policing of the capital is a vital thing. And I just recall that almost every time there has been this tragic and appalling situation whereby usually a young boy has been killed on the streets of London in a knife crime, the refrain that goes out and often is resounding through the streets is, where is Sadiq Khan? He's often been either absent or silent or non-committal in terms of it. I don't think he's personally responsible for walking up and down the streets of London removing knives, but I think it's something absolutely essential to get some kind of handle on, and it's something that affects all children from all families and anybody else who walks on the streets of London for whatever reason. Tom, I have to go to a break, but I appreciate your contribution. Thank you so much. Good to talk to you.
I'm really, really angry, actually, about the fact that she lied.
Yeah.
I just don't think that's right at all. Someone who is in charge of our economy is not qualified to do that. And that makes me very scared. I actually feel quite scared that she's in charge of our economy and she has absolutely no experience.
Well, it's not experience, but it's different experience at a totally different level and not the experience of an economist. However, you did hear our first guest saying, well, she's only a front person, really, and there'll be plenty of chancellors in the past and the future who aren't economists at all. And really, they're told what to do by the private secretaries, the civil service, the senior ones. That's what they're for. So we're not just in the personal hands of Rachel Reeves for everything that happens next, which is true, kind of.
Yeah, that's true. But she's the front person. She's the person that we're looking at, and she actually gets paid to do this job. There could have been someone else who is better suited to do this job. I don't know who, but someone else could have been doing that job. She's not going to be one of those people or one of the pensioners who are going to be huddled up under a blanket, is she? But no, she's the one making the decisions about what's happening to our economy.
OK, let's start by asking how you voted yesterday.
Well, I voted against the legislation, having scrutinised it incredibly closely, and I'm left with really deep concerns as a result of the outcome.
And we should just state, I think people will already know this if they're long-time LBC listeners, because they're very knowledgeable about all matters, but this was an issue that had no political pressure. There was no whip involved. You could vote according to your own conscience. So, as you say, you scrutinised it carefully and you came to the conclusion that you were going to oppose it. Why did you decide that? Explain to us what were the kind of mental machinations that you went through to reach that conclusion.
Well, first of all, I obviously sense the tragic stories that people have been telling about their own experience of end-of-life care. But we know we're in a context where the NHS isn't working, social care, if available, is incredibly costly, but also palliative care, massively underfunded, 100,000 people across the country still not able to access it. But on top of that, those that do, it's often late, inequitable. And we know that even staff delivering that service, particularly in the community, are under severe duress. So we need to fix palliative care first and foremost. And I believe that should be the sequencing: fix palliative care and then see what problem we're trying to solve.
May I interrupt you? Sorry, Rachel, to ask you this. When you say fix palliative care, I think I've spoken to many doctors on LBC in previous radio stations, etc., and they seem to be divided over the actual efficacy and potency of palliative care. Some people will tell you that morphine, even at a really advanced dose, doesn't really take away the pain. What it does is it puts people in a sort of a comatose state where they're sort of delirious. And so it's supposed that because they're not really au fait with what's going on, they're not really aware that they're in terrible pain. But far too many of us will remember and will never be able to forget the memory of sitting at the bedside of people that we love who are dying in pain, despite the fact that palliative care is being administered. They're being given what's available. What's available isn't good enough. It's not so much that the care isn't good enough, it's that the drugs aren't good enough. They don't exist to take away the pain.
Well, a number of things on that front. First of all, the end-of-life care specialists don't just deal with pain, they deal with the whole of life. And their interventions are really needed from the point of diagnosis to help people come to terms with their diagnosis. That would significantly reduce the very tragic suicides that people have because they haven't got that psychological support at the point of diagnosis, right through the management decision making that people take throughout their final days. That's really important. When it comes to pain control, there is more that can be done. And we know that the confidence of palliative care specialists, as opposed to people in the community administering drugs, pain relief drugs, is very different, and how you titrate those drugs. But also then you can look at things like nerve blocks and cordectomies to control extreme pain, which is very, very rare. If you talk to people that have had the full support within a hospice environment, actually the care people get is extraordinary. And therefore, we need to be able to push palliative medicine to as far as we can, and of course putting the resources in to be able to achieve that. So it is there's a long way to go in that space.
And you don't think that in a way what you're doing is saying, because everybody knows now the way this would work if it were to be enacted, which is that it has to be an adult, it has to be somebody who has 6 months or fewer to live, it has to be somebody who convinces two doctors, not at the same time, with a gap between both appointments, that they are of sound mind, they know what they want to die, they don't want to live out the full 6 months in the situation that they're in. Then they have to convince a High Court judge, then another doctor with another gap between. Are you not kind of trying to imply that these people don't know what they want? Surely they're in absolutely the position, in the eye of the storm, knowing that death is nigh but not quite near enough, to say, well, look, I don't fancy living out the whole 6 months or however long it's going to be, and going into a hospice and having a spinal cord block and having titrated morphine or whatever this MP Rachel Maskell thinks I ought to live an extra 6 months to live. I, myself, being of sound mind, do not want to, and I don't need Rachel or anybody else to tell me I do want to. The whole point of this is I know what I want, and I don't want that. That's not what I want. Why are they not allowed? Why do you feel worried that they would be allowed to say that and make that choice?
Okay, let's look at two main factors. First of all, who qualifies? For somebody to prognosticate at 6 months, only 46% accuracy. So first of all, that is an unsafe and it's a premature measure. Often people are talking about what they need in the final days, not the final 6 months. So ending life prematurely is something that Parliament should really consider very seriously. Moving beyond that.
So I don't know I didn't understand what you said. What did you mean?
Well, as I say, to prognosticate at 6 months is only a 46% accuracy. That means a 54% inaccuracy of that 6 months.
So are you implying that they might be thinking they're only going to live 6 months, but actually they might live 9 or 14?
Well, that's coming from the profession and the research.
Yeah, but presumably if they're asking to die sooner, it's because they don't want to live an extra month on the end, or an extra 3 months, or an extra 7 months.
If you let me complete the scenario of who else is included and then why this is unsafe. Secondly, we could be talking somebody as young as 18. What this says in the legislation is that, I think we all understand if somebody doesn't want an aggressive course of chemotherapy at the end of life and chooses not to have that treatment. But supposing you stop taking your insulin as a diabetic, you would be in scope of this bill because you could die within 6 months. So we've got to look, there are no safeguards around that. There is no caveats. So many people could put themselves in scope. Look, taking the next issue within their coercion. And this is my greatest concern. So first of all, a doctor can raise this with a patient. It's written within the bill. If a doctor raises it, that is significantly coercive because we think about the level of trust we put in a doctor. And if they are to suggest, have you considered an assisted death? Where does that take somebody? But beyond that, we know there's unconscious bias within medicine. I only need mention the Liverpool Care Pathway. And then 5.5 months after that, 5.5 years after that, we had the do not actively resuscitate letters from doctors going particularly to older people, disabled people, ethnic minorities. So we know that unconscious bias exists within healthcare. And then if we look at the issue of coercion, think of the scale within abusive relationships of coercion we're seeing at this time. And we know that people only recognise that often years after it has occurred. So it's too late if somebody is dead by then because they have been coerced into this situation. But when I was a clinician working with patients, I would hear regularly from my patients that they didn't want to be a burden. If they were having to pay for social care, it would cost so much that they'd actually rather that money went to a family member, grandchild, etc. So people self-coerce into that environment, in an environment where actually becomes more and more acceptable. In Canada, they classify this as a duty to die. So if we are in that environment, many people could find themselves, particularly the vulnerable, in a situation where they end up dying prematurely, not through their will, but because they believe it's the right thing to do. There are no safeguards within that bill to ascertain that because, one, you're meeting with a clinician in private who may not know that patient. Yes, it is twice, but you have to look at what the Isle of Man is doing. It's considering a parole board style. So actually, clinicians are held to account by other clinicians. We know that within closed environments are the most unsafe places within healthcare. That's been shown time and time again, whether it's Shipman or Winterbourne View, etc. So this is incredibly unsafe, this legislation. The role of the judiciary, if you read the detail in the bill, is literally to rubber stamp the doctor's work. So it doesn't add layers of protection. And if you're a concerned relative, or perhaps even a concerned physician, you have no means of appeal because the appeal courts have been suspended. So you could suddenly find that your mother is no longer here and you've never had the opportunity to protect her, knowing her vulnerabilities, but the state won't know that. So that's why I believe that this bill is unsafe.
Rachel Maskell, thank you very much indeed for joining me. That's Rachel Maskell there, the Labour MP for York Central, giving a very passionate explanation about why she voted against the assisted dying bill.
What an absolute hero, absolute fantastic role model to men everywhere across the United Kingdom. The contempt of men in society is just absolutely, it's turning off people. And Gregg Wallace, what an absolute strong male role model to come out and say something and face down these allegations about making inappropriate jokes over 20 years. At the end of the day, like, Gregg Wallace is an entertainer on mainstream TV. And when you're entertaining at top level, you have to be interesting and come up with jokes.
Yeah.
Men and women are both sexually minded. Let's make no mistake about that and pretend that all men are just sexual deviants. Men and women are both sexually minded. And Gregg Wallace appeals to the mass majority of people, which is how the law measures things. The law is based on cultural norms about the consensus. Yeah, well, he's going to be measured by the law now, isn't he, legally? So.
Well, I don't think so, no. I don't think anyone's arresting him. I don't think he's going to have to answer to the law. I think he'll be
paying large amounts of money to face these allegations down, which is the whole.
I don't know if that's true either. I don't know if anyone's asking for money. I don't think there's financial compensation.
The whole basis of the UK is we have a legal system that empowers women to make allegations against men.
Excuse me, he's not embroiled in the legal system.
But he's applied a legal team. And his legal team have come out and had to make representations.
But that's not because he's under arrest or because he's being accused of a crime. That is just because
coming down the line, though, isn't it? Well, they're trying to correlate and collate lots of different random people's views to try and create weight to put him through the process.
I don't
putting him through the
so.
process,
I think
he's already had to step away from his job, you know. So men across the UK are fed up of this, and Gregg Wallace is actually going to become. This is a turning point for men in this society.
In what
He's
way?
actually going to become a massive social icon. As an alpha male, you know.
But why? Excuse me. Hello, hang on a second. But why is it alpha to embarrass women or humiliate women or make sexually explicit comments about what you just did sexually to your young wife, to a woman who you don't know but are working with? Why is that some kind of vindication?
Men and women are both sexually minded. That's true. Men and women are sexually minded beings.
You may be sexually minded, but is there not?
Been a large part of society for a very long time.
Hang on a minute, though.
Carry On films.
But not all of this is. But hang on a second. First of all, do you not concede at least that there is a time and a place, and the workplace is not the place? If you want to have, sexual innuendo with your mates, with your friends.
Gregg Wallace's job as an entertainer is to entertain, and people are entertained by innuendo, sexual joke and other themes that go on. And he's been in that job for such a long time now. The BBC have kept him in that job. If the BBC had been met by a large consensus, a majority of people phoning in and making complaint, they would have removed him. But the public have already taken the vote. The BBC have said, we're happy with this man. If there was any challenge against his behaviour, it would be the BBC that would be held liable for not policing him better, or
but that's exactly what is now happening, isn't it? Because it turns out there have been a series of complaints. One of them way back in 2008, another one 2000
over 20 years.
Well, it doesn't matter, does it? Whether it's over 20 years or over a year.
It's a bit like burning the man at the stake, isn't it? We're going to call him a witch and burn him at the stake. And if he wants to keep himself off that stake, he needs to pay a lot of money to the legal system that operates in this country. And this is becoming a thing that men and women, particularly young boys and men, are seeing now from online social media. They're becoming aware of this contempt of men and how the legal system works.
Why does any of this story show any contempt for men? Is this not a story of a man allegedly showing contempt for women in the workplace.
This is a story.
Where is contempt for men a part of this story?
The contempt of men is that Gregg Wallace has had allegations made against him, and he's come out and very confidently said, listen, this isn't true. This isn't who I am. And look, I'm actually for equality. And if you look at equality and how men and women are measured, he's saying plenty of women in society make innuendo jokes and aren't held to account in this way. All he's done is make jokes. And over the course of the year, over the course of his 20 years, some will land, some won't. Now, if people have a problem with his joke, they should take it on with him. You know, women are empowered.
But as I've said, I
society.
think 3 times to you now, they did. Some women did. And the thing that you're underestimating, I feel, is his position of power as the big name on the show. And,
he doesn't have any power.
Yes, he
Vanessa.
does. He does. He's a judge.
He's
a judge. The judge has a power. The judge has power to say.
He's come out and said, I'm innocent, and he's faced down allegations from the women lobby group who are vilifying him as a male. This is how the legal system.
What lobby group?
This group of women, this group of people
they're
are all
not
women,
a group
aren't
of
they?
people. That's not fair. They're not.
They're a group
not.
of women. That's what he's saying.
They're not.
And this poor man,
excuse me.
This poor man, he's an alpha male, right? And fair play to him. He's standing up and saying, look, this isn't right. And he's come out and said that. And the media are shooting him down because he has a voice. Men aren't allowed to speak up. And that's why you're hammering him down hard.
It sounds as if he's done nothing but speak up for 20 years and speak up in a way that has caused offence and has caused humiliation. But that's not entertaining. But that's not entertaining, is it?
It is entertaining. The consensus has said he's been entertaining
but
for 20 years. His employer's been happy.
Excuse me, that's what the people watching at home have seen. But these incidents were not broadcast at home. So they may well have enjoyed the programme. That's because they didn't see or hear these things that it's alleged that he said. They're not part of the script. They're not on the show. That's why people at home didn't. He what?
You have the right
not
to be
when you're
offended.
watching a cooking program. You don't, and you don't have the right to be.
You certainly do.
No, you don't. When you're in the when you're in the workplace,
or a program, or OnlyFans, or whatever you want.
When you're in the workplace, as was discussed on my show yesterday on LBC, where I spoke to an employment lawyer, in the workplace, you don't have the right to be offended. You have the right not to be offended. Is the case?
That's what the
law says. All right, listen, you've made your point, but it's the most confusing and most illogical and most irrational and most bizarrely put together point. But I've certainly given you the chance to air it. Thank you very much for ringing. Let's go to Angie in Birmingham. Hello, Angie.
One of my sons a year ago was just kind of sick of the life here, going up to London on the train, never getting a seat, just unsafe, like early in the morning, just, the rat race. And one day he found a job and was like, Mum, I'm going to live in Dubai.
Oh, no.
Obviously, I was absolutely devastated.
Of course.
But, he found out all about it, got all the job interviews online. They loved him, got him to come over, sorted out all of the visas. And before you go there, you have to have lots of blood tests to make sure, everything is good.
Yeah.
You're not going to bring any disease into the country and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
And it was like commission-based only. It was selling property. And he is flying, It took him a few months to get, because he'd never sold property before. He sold energy. And literally, he, on a good month, he earned £16,000.
It's true. Wow.
Yeah.
God, I can see my team through the glass, and lots of them are very young and gorgeous, and half of them fell over when you said that. I think they're now not concentrating on the show. They're making a few calls to Dubai to see if they can get out there and sell some property instead. Wow, that's a lot of money.
I am fuming.
Why? I'd love to know why you're fuming.
Because everyone, if you look at all the women that they question are women of colour. Every single one of them is a woman of colour. Now, if it was a white woman that done this and she had extra talent, sheuld be celebrated.
Do you really think so? If it was a white
100%
woman who was that large and that sort of, built in that way with those sorts of features and that kind of, having already failed a gender test once, you think that because the person was white, it was...
Okay.
Really?
Let's look at Michael Phelps. Right. His wingspan is the biggest there. He doesn't produce lactic acid like the next person. So he's got an unfair advantage. He does. Okay, but no one wants to strip him. He's the most decorated swimmer that we have in this world.
Right.
You know, no one says anything about him. He's got extra powers. He is celebrated. But these women of colour, and every single one of them, you know, you can't say there's little Heidi from Sweden. Because Heidi from Sweden, every single one is there. Now, I want to go back to your J.K. Rowling comment.
Yes.
I find her, I don't read Harry Potter. It's not my bag, but she had iconic status.
Yeah.
You know, she didn't leave this country. She paid her taxes.
Yes.
She could have been so amazing, but yet she chooses to, to pick on a marginalised group already. But I don't see her tweeting about the Dutch volleyball player at all.
You'll have to tell me about the Dutch volleyball player because I don't know a thing about that.
He's a convicted paedophile.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
God, yes. Of course I do. I've read about that. Yes.
Yeah. You know, he came over here when he was 19 years old, raped 4 times a 12-year-old. This 12-year-old is self-harming, can't get on with their life. I don't know who they are. But, yeah, if you're so worried about women's rights and women, why aren't you going to saying anything bad about that? But, yet, a woman that is biologically a woman who's been proven by the IOC, you choose to go and talk badly about her, you know, to jump on the bandwagon. And the lady 3 calls ago, you know, it's that whole turf thing. Sorry, I'm really sorry. I am fuming.
I just wonder whether there will be people from your background, people who came originally from India, who will just be thinking, well, I haven't found it like that. This lady's had a most terrible time of it, but her tale is very, very extreme, incredibly extreme.
But you know what? When they came, let me tell you this. I think England was a bit more of a civilized country as well. Even though there was racism, there were very racist people. There were other pockets of society, more educated people who were more welcoming, it wasn't as rampant, and it sort of balanced out. It was easier for them to get ahead. You know, whereas it's not like that now. What with the welfare system and, you know, people on welfare and benefits breeding like rabbits, the whole country has kind of gone downhill because
breeding like rabbits. Sorry, Monica, hang on.
Cooler.
People on benefits breeding like rabbits is a pretty revolting thing to say, isn't it, about other people?
I mean, it is a fact that they were encouraged.
It isn't just a fact. It isn't just a fact. It's a pretty hostile, antagonistic, dehumanizing thing to say about people, isn't it? It's not a way to refer to other people. They're just people.
True, though. It's true.
But it isn't true.
I mean, it's become a more cruel country generally.
But I don't know whether you're also kind of doling out some cruelty along the way in what you're saying, the way you're saying
I've received it myself, you know. So
and your life now, have you found a way of leading it that is you know, freer of these?
No, I'm really. I mean, I suffer terribly from all my horrible experiences of living in this country.
Yeah.
You know, terrible depression, anxiety.
I'm very sorry to hear it. Sounds dreadful. Maybe you're sidelined. You just don't seem to feature when you hear what they're talking about and focusing on. And in the second hour of this programme, it's going to be gender-free toilets, which Kemi Badenoch is making a colossal feature of. Maybe you just think, what? It's hard enough to find a toilet when I leave the house. Anyway, there are no public toilets anywhere where we live. What's she talking about? Gender-free toilets. How can that be the thing that they care most about and are putting on the front page of every newspaper today? What the beeping hell are they playing at? Gender-free toilets. Maybe when you hear the word Rwanda, you want to scream, put your head in a pillow and scream and think, well, how's that going to help me? What are they doing for me and my family? Do you remember that time there was a headline, I think it was in the Sun newspaper, and the headline just said, they don't get it. They don't get it. I think it might have been during the MP's expenses scandal. Do you remember? It was a long while ago. It just said they don't get it. And I'm wondering whether you feel like that now. They just don't get it. They don't get what you really care about. They don't get what problems you're facing. They don't get you. They don't care about you. They're not catering for you. And yet, when you go to that polling booth on election day, what are you going to put in the blinking box? You've got to put something, haven't you? If you're in a democracy, you've got to try and vote for somebody.
I am enraged. I was born in this country. I am British. This is my country, yeah? I am Muslim, I am brown, and I am proud. And I cannot believe that people are trying to justify this disgusting behaviour with, oh, well, you know what, this and that. What is going on with our people? What is going on with our nation? Where are our morals left? For God's sake, I'm Muslim, yeah? My son is... I don't wear a headscarf, but you know we're Muslim by looking at us because we ain't got blonde hair, blue eyes. Sorry, everyone. But we're human beings. We pay our taxes. I'm a special needs teacher. I have a severely autistic son that's supposed to be going and getting a blood test done today. But because we're Muslim, we need to stay indoors.
Tell me about that, though.
We know
Seriously.
it's gonna happen.
Really?
I've had enough. All right, let me put it this way.
But
to you,
Alif,
yeah?
seriously, hang on, wait. Your son was meant to get a blood test today and you really feel that you better not go. So, literally, you're too frightened to go. In Romford.
I haven't let my son go to school. Yes, do you know why?
Why?
Because this hasn't been going on for just a week. This has been going on for a very long time.
So what sort of thing have you experienced in the Romford area that makes you feel you can't go get a blood test?
I'll give you a prime example.
Please, yeah.
My great-granddad was in the Royal in the Army, British Army. My father was working for the Ministry of Defence. I am working as a special needs teacher. So do you get the pattern here, yeah? We're all serving our people, this country, because this is our country. We're English, yeah? We're British. I don't care what anyone says to us. Now, I never, ever got racism when I was growing up. But my children have had racism in Romford. My grandson has had racism and he's only 6 months old.
In the street or where? How?
Okay, one time, my daughter,
she
was in secondary school. She was 12 years old. One of the kids come up to her and said to her...
Don't say anything on the radio that we can't say.
No, I'm not going to say anything racist. Don't worry, I'm a special needs teacher. I know all about it.
Okay.
I'm just so angry, my love. Don't worry. I'm not going to swear.
Good.
The girl comes up to her and says to her, your parents must really hate you because they washed you in a dirty lake and that's why you're always dirty and brown.
Oh, my goodness.
Okay?
Yes, I hope the school dealt with it. Did the school deal with it?
No.
Why not?
They didn't. They said kids will be kids. My son was stopped for a random stop-spot check by the police because he looks like a terrorist in their eyes because... He's 16, but he looks like he's 20. He's tall. He's got brown skin. He's got a lot of facial hair. Sorry, this is our makeup. This is our genetics. But it doesn't mean we're monsters. Secondly...
So hang on just 1 second, Alif, because I'm going to have to stop to go to the news headlines any minute. And I really don't want to because I would really like to talk to you much more about this. Do you see, when you look at the rioting and the rioters, all of it, or, kind of in conjunction with all the different places in the country, all the different attacks on a library, a food bank, a hotel, whatever it is, do you see pure and simple racism, bigotry and hatred, or do you see thuggery, criminality, people who wish to influence other people? What do you see?
Right, this is what I see. I see an organisation that is trying to stir hatred and anger in the country because at the moment...
Well, hang on, wait, which organisation? Who do you mean? Who?
I'm not going to say any names because there's too many of them. Whoever doesn't want immigration and whoever thinks that all Muslims are terrorists, those kind of mentality people. You can't put them in one basket. You can't say they're this group or they're that group. It's about that individual. It's about the lack of education they've had, the upbringing they've had.
What did you think might happen if you took your son for the blood test that he needed today in Romford?
Okay, I'll tell you what would happen.
What would happen?
Because our NHS is already crumbling, and because these very immature, uneducated people have done this, my son is severely autistic.
Right.
So I will have to take my son to Queen's Hospital. And because they are so busy and inundated, my son won't get a SEN nurse. So my son will have a few full-blown panic attack, start self-harming, and then he will have to be restrained by 2 doctors for a blood test. But now, if these so-called people cared about their country and their people so much, they wouldn't put the burden that they have on their people and their country. We're already on our knees. We're already trying to rebuild our country. So
it's an absolutely devastating call, and I don't know if you heard, Alef, I don't know if you heard me yesterday. I was in Carol Vorderman's slot yesterday, and a Muslim caller, talked about the sheer number of his grandpa's grandchildren in this country who are doctors, nurses, pharmacists, and he talked about the number of patients that and dentists as well, that his family have looked after and served. It's a very similar call and a very similar kernel of content to the call from you, and I'm devastated that you are so distressed today and devastated that your son hasn't had the blood test that he needs. Tell me about homeopathy. Does that play any part in your life?
Yes, a very big part. And I thought I must call because I thought, I wanted the public to make an informed decision. And it's always, I feel it's really unfair because they often hear the other side of the story and not so much the homeopathic side. So I just wanted to share my personal experience, really.
Yes.
So I've grown up in a household where my father is actually a homeopath.
Yes.
And, I've even got my sister who's a dentist, but we all believe in homeopaths like anything. And the reason is because I've seen, growing up, I've seen actual surgeons come in, see my father with their children, even though, they work, as GPs or as surgeons in your local hospitals. And very big surgeons. And I've seen miracles. I've seen people with asthma and, really, really severe asthma. And, they've sort of come out of it. And I've seen how grateful they've been to my father. And it's just growing up. I've never actually, to be honest, I don't know who my GP is because I've never actually gone to my GP. I've just, literally lived off.
Literally?
I've just lived off these. Yeah, literally, I've lived off these medicines. I can only remember once going in just to get a doctor's note, maybe for work.
Gosh, so how old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
So I'm almost 40 now, so 30.
And literally, you've never been to a conventional medical doctor?
No,
that's
I just
amazing.
Can't remember. I probably have, and probably the odd occasion, but like I said, just for perhaps, just for perhaps a checkup or a doctor's note for work, maybe.
Gosh. But what about the sorts of things that most people, well, lots of people anyway, not everybody, but most people really do rush to the doctor for? And that's when you have a really horrible infection, like let's say, a really bad throat infection, that kind of thing. We've got they call it a strep throat in America. You open your mouth, there's a load of pus in your throat, really, really hurts, incredibly, incredibly uncomfortable, that thing. And you go thinking, oh, give me some antibiotics, please. I really do need them. You don't ever have that.
Perhaps I've never come to that point because perhaps when I've fallen ill slightly, I've taken the medicine at the right time. And it's never got to that point. However, look, the other thing I wanted to mention is a lot of people say placebo effect.
Yeah.
But in our household, we've had a lot of pets as well. And, as a child, I just remember seeing, and I'll give you a small example. I just remember once I was cleaning my pond. And in the process, one of the fishes got really badly injured and was just lying flat, as they do. You think they're dead.
Yeah.
But I just remember my father seeing it sort of breathing a little bit with its gills moving.
Yeah.
So we put it in a different sort of, we put it in water.
Yes.
In a separate bucket of water. And I just remember him putting a few drops of his medicines in there. And lo and behold, literally within, I think, a day, it started swimming as normal. So it's just stuff like that. When you see the effect
I tell you
on animals,
something, Saad. When I instigated this discussion about homeopathy, I did not think I was going to get a caller. I feel now as if I'm starring in a fish called Wanda, quite frankly. And so are you. We're starring in it together, or you and I are in The Little Mermaid, the Disney version, the only good one, because the original fairy tale is an absolute drag as far as I'm concerned. The Disney version, tremendous. I won't say that about many things. And you and I are under the sea. I'm there with Flounder, the guppy. I can't believe you're telling me about your father bringing a goldfish that's already swimming on one side back to life using homeopathy.
Seriously.
That's amazing.
No, absolutely. And just the other thing I wanted to say, I know you asked about medicines that work.
Yeah.
Something that's really worked for me, especially because I play a lot of sports, is Arnica 30.
What does that do?
So with any injury, for example, you've pulled a muscle or something along those lines, and I just remember giving it to one of my friends who plays tennis, and he was just flabbergasted when he said, it worked really well for him as well. So I mean, just a couple of. I just wanted the public to know that it's some things are very difficult to perhaps evidence. And for example, honey, we all know honey works; it's great for you. But if you actually wanted to sort of prove it, it's very difficult at times. But I guess just from experience, I can say it definitely works. And a lot of doctors out there will also tell you, and I hope someone's brave enough to call and share their experience.
Well, what an amazing call. I can't tell you how much I enjoyed it. I don't know if I'm allowed to enjoy myself this much at work. I'm probably not. I'm probably going to get into terrible trouble for having such a marvellous time. Especially that you had me at goldfish, honestly. With the word goldfish, I was yours forever. Thank you for the call. I don't know whether you'll ever top this first time call that you've made, but if you would like to try, I'd be honoured to talk to you again, Saad. Thank you so much.
I picked up the tab twice, actually. I paid for my ex-partner twice to get her bum done. First time she's done it, she was like, it's not big enough. She wanted it bigger.
Whoa.
Yeah. And then I got it done the second time and she kept nagging me for it. So I've done it twice and it's just unbelievable. Now she looks like an ant, with the ones with their...
I'm not sure that's a compliment unless that's the way you like it to look, do you?
I don't like it like that, and that's why I've left. I was like, absolutely, it's not acceptable. Absolutely.
Are
yeah,
you serious? So
absolutely.
you shelled out the
I got
dosh for
scammed,
this?
basically. She scammed me for it. She said to me, it's going to look nice.
Yeah.
So we'll get it done, and then she made me do it again, and then that was the end of it. I was like, this is not happening again.
So I need to know. I need to know so
much
much stuff from you then, because you're the expert on this, as far as I'm concerned. All right, how much was each butt lift?
$3,500.
Okay, and did you check it out on the basis of the cost? So you went for the cheapest one in Turkey or wherever?
It was a medium price one.
Right.
That's why I don't think it came out very well. I think the more expensive one was probably around $7,000. I was going to pay for that. $3,500 the first time and $2,500 the second time, and that's why it came out a bit funny.
Okay, let's not get too personal, but let's just get a bit personal. Was her butt shape unsatisfactory before? Was she somebody with just no shape to her buttocks, or why was she so obsessed with kind of reinforcing her bum the whole time?
To be honest, the first time, it was not an iron board.
So she had a flat butt, in other words.
A flat butt, yeah.
A flat butt.
Iron board.
Okay, but obviously you didn't mind because you were already her partner at this point.